Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your Thursday to join us for today's webinar, which is Kansas Challenge and Broadband Updates. And with us today, we have Morgan Barnes with the Kansas Office of Broadband Development, who is going to share some information with us. So, Morgan, I would like to go ahead and turn the mic over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kim. We really appreciate you and your team for having us today. We just really appreciate everyone's time, and a quick shout out to any elected officials we have in attendance. We really appreciate your support as we are moving this process forward. So quickly, I would just like to shout out to our other KOBD team members that are on the call. As it's a webinar, they can't wave or say hello, but presenting with me is Broadband Program Manager Joshua Edgar. Give a wave. And then we have also some consultant partners, but I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Joseph Lay, our Deputy Director, who is on. Joseph is a great leader within the department, and we just really appreciate his support. From our consultant partners, we have Bob and Stephanie. We believe Bob's going to show us some demonstrations later. I think there was some technical difficulties, but in an effort to make sure we use everyone's time appropriately, we are just going to keep rolling. So thank you so much again. As we move to the next slide, we're going to go over kind of the agenda today. With the agenda, we're going to talk about the challenge process implications for you, whether you are representing cities or communities or local governments. We're going to cover the data officially approved challenge types from National Telecommunications and Information Administration, our governing body, or the federal approvers of the work that we are doing. So we'll also discuss pre-registration as an eligible entity and what to expect during this process. And we'll wrap up with next steps and some funding opportunities. So feel free to drop questions in the chat or raise your hand. You know, we really value your engagement and support. So let's take a dive on it. So as most of you are aware, and some of you, I believe, attended a previous webinar we did on this work, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Kansas was allocated $451 million in June of 2023. However, to use those funds, we're required to create strategic plans and implement a process that we show we are building out in areas that are considered unserved or underserved. Under the guidance of NTIA, we selected their challenge process model to ensure that we build out in the areas of need, but we also recognize that some areas in need are considered served. So that's where this official mapping or challenge process comes into place. So you recognize the importance of this process because you're here. It also allows you as an eligible entity or local government to challenge for your community. NTIA defined 4 eligible entities to challenge. So if you are here, you've made it into this webinar and you are not one of the eligible entity groups, which is the tribal or local government, a nonprofit, or an internet service provider, please, we encourage you to reach out to one of those groups and advocate to be part of the process. So we are currently updating our BEAD website, and we encourage you to continue to look at that website to learn more about the challenge process and kind of the status on where that is. So let's move into the what, when part of this conversation. Josh, can you share on the next slide?
Yep, I will take it away. All right, so what is the challenge process? Essentially, it's submitting evidence to prove that, or to show that the location should not be listed as eligible for BEAD funding. As we move into the BEAD process, we want to make sure that we are allocating our funds appropriately to make the best use of them. And this is all part of that process, just making sure that we're aiming the money towards the right places. For a more Succinct definition, you can go to requirement 7 in the BEAD initial proposal, volume 1, which is also on our website. When will this occur? Once BEAD volume 1 is approved and volume 2 is submitted and locations are deduplicated. And so for those who've been following along, there is 2 parts to BEAD. Technically there's 3 parts, but right now we're kind of dealing with 2 parts, which is volume 1 and volume 2. And essentially it lays out, the process that KOBD will go through to make sure that the money is going to the right place and that our grant processes work carefully, and just make sure that we are doing everything in our power to serve Kansas effectively. So essentially, in terms of just when this will all start dropping, probably we're estimating early December, when the actual challenge process will begin. So next slide, please. Okay. All right, so this is kind of just a breakdown of the timeline of what we're looking at. So we've already gone through several orientation sessions, and we've already gone through pre-challenge modifications. And we are now moving into the actual designated contacts with eligible entities. It's when they'll actually start submitting challenges. And we'll also be moving into rebuttals made by those who are challenged, followed by finally adjudication. That will continue again in December, and then we'll wrap that up hopefully into December or into January, and then moving into February of 2024. We will do the final deduplication of BSLs to establish our funding areas, after which the NTIA will review and validate the results. And finally, in March of 24, we will move into the public notice of final determination, and hopefully we'll have our initial proposal approved, and we can actually begin the sub-grantee process. And so again, it's hopefully, there's a lot going on. We get that, and we'll kind of break down what this process looks like. But again, if you want more detailed information, it is in our volume 1. So I think we can move on to the next slide, please. All right, thank you. All right. So I know I've mentioned this at various points, but it's crucial to reiterate that locations deemed served will not be eligible for broadband build-out. This underscores why we need your assistance as our challenger in this process. There are several ways you can contribute. Firstly, familiarize yourself with the challenge process instructions and guidance. We'll provide a link to the KOBD website, and you can find a link to the detailed document in the resource section. Also, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Moreover, we request that you gather acceptable evidence. Examples include, but are not limited to, screenshots of a provider webpage, information about a service request refused within the last 180 days, and details about the lack of suitable infrastructure in a dated letter or email. We'll link a document with these specific examples of evidence for your reference. Those resources will aid you in assessing your community's needs and identifying opportunities. When submitting a challenge, please note that we cannot process emails or informal conversations. It needs to be an official document submitted through the process to ensure that Kansas are being connected. All right. I think I will now pass the mic over to Bob, who will share about the different types of challenges eligible entities or organizations are able to file. All right, Bob, over to you.
Am I unmuted, Morgan?
You are unmuted, Bob.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you. My name is Bob Stewart. We're very pleased to be assisting the state of Kansas to try to get universal service to all Kansans. And this part of the process is very important because only the locations, which when we say locations means addresses, that come out of this process will be eligible for the nearly $500 million in funding that Kansas has to deploy broadband. What you see in front of you is a chart of the different kinds of challenge types. And so these are actually different buttons that will be on the website with a map. So you can click on a point, like an address, you can gather a number of points, or you can upload a file with point information in it. So real quickly, the top ones you see on there: availability, speed, latency, data cap, technology, and business only service. That is the types of things that you would challenge if a provider was not providing adequate service. So availability would be, I can't get broadband at my home. And it's not, I can't get it at all. The providers have refused my service. So just to kind of expound on what Joshua said. So the evidence there would be a website that says service is not available at your location, a website screenshot, a letter from the provider that says we can't service you unless you pay us, a lot of money to run the fiber drop to your home, those kinds of things. Speed is exactly what it says. If the speed you're getting is not 100 over 20 and you're subscribed to service that's 100 over 20 megs, then your speed test would say, hey, I'm buying this service, but I'm not getting it. Latency is something that is usually taken with a speed test, and it finds the delay between you hitting the enter key on your keyboard and you getting a response back from your keyboard. Latency is obviously a very big issue, or has been a big issue with satellite service. Data cap is exactly that. I think if I remember the number right, and Melinda may correct me because she's our NTIA federal program officer, I think the data cap is 600 gigs per month. So if you have a data cap plan that says you can only use it so much, then you have a data cap challenge. Technology is that the technology that you think you should be getting at a certain speed is not the technology you get. So if you're on old telco DSL service and you think you should be on fiber, you're going to challenge that technology and say this technology can't do what they say it can do. Business only service is kind of a marketing thing. Many providers will only provide broadband service to businesses and not to residents. And so this basically says, hey, I need residential service. The next group that you see below, enforceable commitments, plan service, not part, and is it a CAI? Those are places, enforceable commitments are where a provider has already received state or federal or local money to build out that area. And BEAD is not going to double fund that area. So if a ISP or a city or a town or a county has gotten some assistance in the past to build out broadband, then this would be, I have knowledge that'll be deployed as an enforceable commitment. Please do not build broadband here with BEAD funds. That's the nature of that challenge. Planned service is an ISP plans to build service in your area, but they haven't delivered it yet. So they're able to challenge our funding if service is available in your area by June 30th of 2024. So basically next summer. So we're not pushing this out years. If they're planning on building service after that date, that location would in fact be available for BEAD funding. Not part of an enforceable commitment means that I, as a provider, have overstated what I am going to give to you. And there are locations, and we typically refer to them in the industry as donut holes. There's a donut hole in the middle of this area that you're not building out. So even though you say it's in your enforceable commitment, it's in money you've already received, it's not. And so I'm going to tell you that I want funding. The last two may be very important to this organization of people on this call. Community anchor institutions are any place that facilitates a greater use of broadband and also includes all schools, libraries, medical institutions, and other institutions that serve the needs of the community. So KOBD has compiled a very voluminous list of these. And if those are not on the list, then this is where you as a community official would say, hey, I've got this community center over here that trains kids for broadband or trains veterans for broadband or whatever, group of population we're talking about here. And we think this should be classified as a CAI, community anchor institution. That's important because in the BEAD plan, community anchor institutions get 1 gig symmetrical service. That means lots of people can hit their website and it's not going to crash. So that's why those last two are important. Now, other community anchor institutions, oftentimes you have a residence that is the mailing address for a non-for-profit association or a business that is a mailing address, or they've gone out of business and they don't exist anymore. So if the community anchor institution that will be listed on the website for you to look at, that all this information will be out there, is not a CAI, then we would like you to tell us that these folks, this organization, no longer exists at this address. We're going to have more training on this in the future for you to show you actually how to go through the website and actually click on the buttons to make this happen. I'm done with that slide. Whoever's controlling slides.
It's me. My cue
Okay.
is next slide, Morgan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next slide, Morgan.
There you go.
Okay.
See if that works.
Not yet. At least not on my screen, ma'am.
Okay. I see the pre-registration slide.
Okay, here we go. So what we're going to do is this is what this call is encouraging you to do is go into a website and pre-register your organization. And I'm putting that in quotes because as a local or tribal government, you would be registering as a local tribal government in the portal. So we're asking for the name of you. I'm going to pick on Melissa McCoy, who has volunteered graciously to be our volunteer today. So I would put Saline County in here. Then I'm going to put Saline County's legal mailing address. Then I'm going to put Saline County's website. I'm going to put Melissa's name in the contact information. I'm going to put Melissa's email in the contact information. If she wants me to provide me her phone number, that's great, but that's optional. And then there'll be a drop-down box on who are you. So she would click local government. You can go to the next screen and we're going to demo this in a minute for you so you can see the clicks. Okay. Can I share my screen, Morgan?
You should be able to share your screen, Bob.
Yes. Hopefully this works. Okay. Okay. It looks like I'm screen sharing.
You are?
This is what the website looks like that you'll be going to. And you can see in here, it says you can register if you're an internet service provider, local tribal government, or non-for-profit. One of the questions I would have expected, or maybe it's in your brain, well, can a business or residence go into this website and dispute service at their individual address? And the answer is no. They have to work through one of these three groups. And this group of people, in terms of government officials, you folks probably hear more complaints from any group about the lack of broadband in your area. I was a county commissioner for a few years. I used to get those complaints constantly. Why don't we have broadband, Bob? So anyways, so that's what this is. This is the information you will need in order to register. We're asking you for your employee ID number. For those of you that don't know what that is the number under which you pay contractors or you pay your employees for payroll. And you report to the IRS in the state of Kansas for withholding. So that's what that number is. And it is a required field. And that lets us know that you're a real person, you're a real organization because you have money that you are expending that pays for some form of labor or you're filling out a tax return in the case of a 501c3, that's what that's required for. And that'll all be kept confidential. No one will be able to see that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and register somebody. Hang on. Got to get my glasses on. This is how this works. Register. And if Melissa's on the call, I apologize if I spell anything incorrectly, ma'am. So that was Saline County, right? And the website, this is how long this takes. This is literally how long this will take if you do this. Primary contact, Melissa. And my hands are very sore today, so I'm typing slow. Melissa's email. And we hope that Melissa is going to see an email that doesn't go to her spam folder when I do this. Okay. Primary contact number. Again, you'll see that that doesn't have an asterisk on it. So I'm just going to put in a dummy number here. Okay. What are you? You're a local government. Next. I'm going to type in an EIN, which is a 9-digit field, just like your social security number. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to put in an address, which did I write down an address? Yes, I did. 300 West Ash. And I apologize to Melissa if I get any of this wrong in advance. And this will not be retained for future information. What state are you in? You're in Kansas. And your zip code is 67401. Now, if you want to share some evidence of who you are, because what will happen is this will go to a KOBD staff member for verification and acceptance of your registration. So what we're trying to prevent here is a bunch of unfriendlies, to call them that, I guess, that are just going to come in here and bomb the website. So if I click on this box, what you'll see is my Explorer pull up, and I've just got a bunch of dummy files in here that I use for testing. I can upload. So for an ISP, that might be their Secretary of State registration or anything you believe supports your position that you are you. I hit finish. Uh-oh. Well, I have no idea what that is. No clue. Haven't ever seen that error before.
Hey, Bob,
Hey, what?
I'm sorry, you've got Melissa's email wrong. Would that be part of the problem?
Could be. Oh,
It's supposed to be, hang on, let me get up here. It's McCoy M.
it's the other way.
Yes,
Sorry, Melissa. We'll see if that's the problem.
Thanks,
you
Kim.
go.
I guess not. Anyways, go on to the next slide, if you would, ma'am.
Sure.
Morgan, because we have what you will see next. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Perfect. I will do.
Actually, I
Gosh.
think you've got to kick me off.
I'm going to kick you off, Bob. Yes.
Okay.
So we'll keep going. You can see how easy the system is, and nothing like a live demo to find something additional to look at. Here you go, Bob.
So this is the email that should have been sent to Melissa. Okay. And what will happen is we at KOBD will look at what you submitted. We'll decide, is it good, bad, or indifferent? And if it's good, you'll get this email that'll say you have been accepted. When you sign in, it's going to take you to the challenge portal and you're going to start entering challenges. So that's what that sign in URL is going to have under it, is the actual portal where you do all that very detailed work on challenges. If it didn't get through the edits, which obviously I just failed, then you would get an email that says, please update your registration. We found these things to be in error. And then you would go back into the portal, you would fix it and resubmit. Okay. Ask Aunt Jan about her ashtray. Could it be in the EIN? That could be too. That could be too. Thank you, Melissa. It could have been I misformatted one of those. So that's the email you're going to get. And once you get that, you're in the system. All right. You are the person that will be allowed to go in and issue challenges. You will also have the ability to add others in your organization by email. You will be the account owner for Saline County, for Melissa. And then if you have various people that work in your organization that will be issuing challenges, Melissa can invite them to be part of the portal. So in many organizations, you might have a county administrator, a county clerk, that is your main person that creates the account. But then you have other people in your organization that may be gathering input from residents, businesses to file these challenges. Those people could then take that information when Melissa invites them to put the information directly into the portal so that not any one person has to go in and put all this information in. Melissa got the email. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that, ma'am. Well, it worked on your end, but obviously didn't work too well on my end. We have a person, Stephanie, who is also on this call, who is acting as KOBD to approve these things. So thank you, Stephanie, for approving my mistake. So this is what's going to happen in registration. And then we're going to get as many people registered as we can over the course of the next couple weeks. So we want township officials, township people, non-for-profits, housing authorities, those folks that have direct contact and direct knowledge of residents or businesses that they support. Those are the folks you need to gather information from and then put it into this portal. You'll be notified when the portal opens, and 30 days later, the portal will close. And I believe Morgan or Joshua kind of went over that schedule earlier. Any questions for me at this point? Concerns? Okie dokie, Morgan. I think control goes back to you, ma'am.
We are,
Oh,
this is just a dashboard.
do you want me to talk to this, Morgan?
Yeah, please.
So when you issue a challenge and you log into the portal, you will get this dashboard. And this will tell you, I've submitted this. It'll tell you the status of the submittal. It'll tell you the ISP you challenged. So for example, AT&T won't provide broadband service to me at these 12 addresses that are in this subdivision or in this section of my county. And I'm using counties as an example. You can issue one challenge for all 12 of those locations. You can then track the progress of that challenge through the process on your dashboard. It'll say things like, you have challenged this. Then it'll say, this is an initial review, which means KOBD is looking at your challenge to determine if it's good enough to send to AT&T to rebut. Then you'll get notice that, yes, it has been approved. And we send it to AT&T. AT&T will have 14 days to reply with their evidence that you're wrong. And if they don't reply, then your challenge is sustained, meaning you won. If they reply, then we take that into what we call disputed status, which will be on your dashboard, which means KOBD will review your evidence, will review AT&T's evidence, and make a determination of which one has the most evidence, excuse me, to make a decision on who's going to win. You'll know the status of each one of those on this dashboard. So that's how we track you. That's how you know what's going on with whatever you've challenged within this process, you'll know on a minute by minute basis where something is in the progress of making a final determination whether that location is eligible for funding.
All right. Perfect, Bob. Thank you. I'm going to toss it back on over to Josh. Does that sound good? Unless there are questions, let me check the chat. There are a couple of questions. Shall we go ahead and just hit those right now? We have Janet McRae asking about the CAI spreadsheet, reviewed and provided back additional steps we should take. We are asking folks, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're asking folks to go ahead and review the data once the portal opens, and then they would need to issue challenges on any CAIs that were missed. You spoke to that earlier a little bit. That's correct, Bob? Josh?
Yes. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just now saw this.
Yeah, so up under when we talked about challenge types, you saw one in there that CAI, our location is a CAI. So those would be the ones we missed that weren't
Perfect.
on the CAI list. If there's one on there that's on the list that doesn't exist or you don't feel should be on the list, that's the other one that says location is not a CAI.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Bob. Let's go ahead and keep moving and then we'll come back. We've got some more questions in the chat and we will open it up further. Go ahead, Josh.
Okay. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Great. All right. All right. Thanks, Bob, for those slides. Now we're going to talk about the challenge process, during the challenge process and what KOBD's role is. So regarding the two processes, we wanted to clarify KOBD's role in handling challenges and administering information. We have the technical support piece in place. If challengers encounter any issues, please reach out to KOBD. We're here to assist and ensure that you have the necessary tools for submitting challenges. It is important to note that after resolving each challenge and before the grant process, we will provide public notice of the resolution for each submitted challenge. Additionally, remember that we must notify the NTIA of any modifications to the initial proposal listing all eligible locations. To sum up, we're here to support the challenge process, provide public notice for resolutions, and ensure NTIA is informed of any modifications. Let's move forward with the next slide, and there we can explore how challengers can contribute to this work during the process. Thank you. All right. So again, as a reminder, challengers include local or tribal governments, nonprofits, and internet service providers. We urge all challengers to stay engaged and regularly check the dashboard that Bob showed us earlier. We would ask that you please ensure you review all published data, as this will play a crucial role in the subsequent steps of allocating BEAD funds and the subgrantee selection process. On the next slide, we'll delve into actions you can take right away as we gear up for this process, set to kick off in early December. Next slide, please.
All right. All right. We sincerely really do appreciate your time. So as we look into the next steps to move this process forward, we ask that you mark your calendars for Monday, November 20th. So that's when you should be able to pre-register for that challenge portal using the information Bob shared and demonstrated online today. So we highly recommend continuing to dive into those details of the challenge process. I have included a link in the resources list on this slide deck. So that will go out with the recording, I think, that Kim sends out. Thank you, Kim, so much. In the resource deck, you'll find additional information about evidence needed for various challenges. Take the time, review it, gear up, seize the opportunity. We know you are all working hard for your communities. Lastly, and most crucially, for Monday, we would like you to be thinking about, I'm sure you are already thinking about, that organizational contact in mind, perhaps even a team of folks that are ready to tackle this challenge. That way, when you can register, share your teammates or add them to the portal, it's always good to have a plan or a scoped out kind of strategy on how you want to do this work. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. I'll hand it on over to Josh to talk about some upcoming funding opportunities from KOBD.
Thank you, Morgan. All right, so just going to talk about a few opportunities to grab hold of some funding. So the first program is the Digital Connectivity Technology Program. Also, we will often refer to it as DCT. It's coming in at about 15 million, and as the name suggests, we're really trying to target technologically under or unserved areas in the form of Wi-Fi. And so, and also device distribution. We're planning on launching this in pretty quick. That this program is again designed for to cover covered populations, and especially in the state that may not have access to not necessarily broadband, but also the ways to get from broadband to actual use, through Wi-Fi and device. The next program we'll be launching is DEC. This is going to be a $5 million program, and it's going to be very similar to digital connectivity, and using, again, it's going to involve device distribution and digital skills training. And we're looking to launch that in January of 24. And finally, we are launching the 4th iteration of our broadband acceleration grant. This one will be 10 million. Previously, it's been 5 million. And this one will have a 50-50 public-private match requirement. And we'll also be moving to a speed of 100 by 20 for areas that lack broadband service. And again, we're hoping to open that in 2024. So we'll go ahead and move to the final slide, which is just, again, a thank you and an invitation to join our broadband newsletter mailing list if you're not already there, and email contacts for Morgan and myself. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right. So thank you again for your time. We very much appreciate your investment in helping us bring broadband to unserved areas in Kansas. If there's any questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or you can drop them in the chat and we'll address them. We'll send out the slide deck to those who are registered, and includes a couple more slides at the bottom covering resources and design requirements. Any questions, again, are much appreciated. So again, thank you for your time. And just want to make sure everyone's aware the session will be posted on the website. So I think I will kick it back over to Morgan to kind of go through any questions that might be left. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And it looks like there are a couple of questions that are being answered in the chat. So
I'm trying Morgan to keep caught up.
You're doing okay. I'm just going to
Okay.
say them out loud. So if you want to go ahead and answer them live, that way everyone has
Cool.
them. They can also check the answered question piece. So we have a
Cool.
question. If I pre-register myself, can I only invite others in my organization to submit challenges, or can they be from one of our partners?
They can be from one of your partners or in your organization. So if you hire a external engineering firm, a firm that's going to gather information through social media, you can invite those people to participate and file challenges. Doesn't have to be the same email domain if that's your technical question.
Perfect. On a planned service challenge, will challenges be accepted after the 6/30/2024 date?
On planned service challenges, the NTIA has specified that that challenge, that location must be in service before or on 6/30 of 24. So if a ISP has their own internal capital that they're looking to deploy broadband with, and their service will be deployed, and they've committed to that deployment, then it has to be deployed on or before 6/30 of 24.
Thank you, Bob. If our provider does not claim to provide broadband, what do we do?
the providers, the data we're using on these locations is built from the FCC provider maps. So if that provider has reported to the FCC that
No,
that
it doesn't.
location, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does not claim. So they are not claiming to provide service in that area.
Then that would be marked as underserved or unserved. Unserved being you can't get service of 25.3 and underserved being you can't get service of 100 over 20. Then those locations would be eligible for BEAD funding.
Okay, perfect. And then does submitting an approved challenge constitute a full application for BEAD funding, or will there be a separate application at a later date? I
That's
think
a
I can
great.
take this.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you'll probably expound on it, but there will be a separate application process at a later date. We are still, this challenge piece is going to help us identify those areas that need support.
So what will happen is after we get through this entire process of challenge, there will be a list published by address that says these are all the locations that we can take into the BEAD funding process. So it'll be very open and transparent.
Next question is, what internet technologies are considered adequate? Doesn't Starlink have adequate statewide coverage by now, even though it is satellite internet?
The answer is no. And the reason being is that the NTIA has determined that satellite internet service is not reliable and does not qualify as their definition of what's called qualifying broadband service, which is 100 over 20 terrestrial or fixed wireless. So that's the answer. The NTIA does not allow satellite internet to be a served location if that's all they can get.
All right, thank you, Bob. And just to reiterate, that seems to be most of the questions from the Q&A via Zoom, but it looks like one got dropped in the chat, and I just want to say it out loud for those still on the call. There is an ask about, does evidence for each address have to be submitted in the challenge? And Bob, you answered yes, evidence is needed for each address, and look for more information. We will give you examples or share it out for making sure you have that evidence information. There's also a link in the PowerPoint that will link to resources there.
Yep. So the quick answer is yes, because let's use availability as an example. Service is not available at my location. The specific evidence I would need would be some sort of denial or a website screenshot off a provider's website that says we don't provide service to your address. That would not be allowed to be evidence for the next address next door. They would have to provide their evidence that service is not available at their address. Hopefully that answers your question. That is a very high bar, by the way. It's a great question. All these questions are really good questions. So
it is. And I want to share, Melinda Stanley is on. Thank you, Melinda, for joining us. She shares in the chat, it's also helpful to point out the reverse of some of what we've discussed. Relocations may show as unserved, but actually have qualifying broadband service. All of this input can help ensure that Kansas invests these public funds wisely. So really appreciate that reminder, Melinda, and your support in being on here. Melinda is our federal program officer, and she is helping us move this work forward and is always cheering Kansas on. It looks like we do also have one more question in the chat from Shannon. Will multiple challenges be needed or allowed per address? I.e. like one saying provider technology or another provider does not serve, etc.
the short answer is yes. You are challenging the provider. So on an availability challenge, again, I'll pick on AT&T. You know, AT&T may not provide address at that location at all. Therefore, you have an availability challenge if in fact they reported it as such. If another provider says, I am providing fiber optic cable to this location, and you can provide evidence that they're not, then that could be a technology challenge against Verizon, as an example, if they're the provider in your area. So yes, multiple challenges are allowed per address.
Perfect. Okay, that seems to be the end of the questions. And I just really want to take one more moment to thank Kim and team for allowing us to share this information with you all. I want to thank you all for attending and sharing time with us. We know your time is very busy and valuable, so we appreciate that. And if you ever have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to Kansas Office of Broadband. We want to make sure you have what you need to be successful and that Kansas gets connected. So thank you. Kim, I'm going to pass the microphone back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for today's broadband call, and lots of great information. Broadband team, thank you all so much for sharing all this wonderful information. And, you know, I'm glad to see that it's being utilized, the tests are being done, and that we are getting connectivity for all Kansans. I mean, it's a big project, it's a big reach, but it's so needed in today's world. As we can tell, we're all here together on you know, Zoom, and so that it is a vital, essential part of our daily living now. So with that, I want to wish everybody a great afternoon and a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and don't forget about the November 20th date that you mentioned, Morgan. So that will be Monday, so stay tuned, and don't forget, we will have broadband folks will be at our conference, the KAC annual conference, which is December 5th through 7th in Wichita. We will have an education session as well. It'll be an exhibitor. So bring your questions, come and learn more. And thank you again, everyone, for attending today's webinar, and have a wonderful afternoon.